Okay, in this video, we're going to be going over the Unit 3 Quiz 1 review. Real quick, before we get into it, I just wanted to talk about things to know for the quiz. So I just made a little bullet point. The things that we're going to go over in the review and the things that are going to be on the quiz are you need to figure out if a study is experimental or observational. You need to be able to identify the treatments, so what each person in the study is going to be doing. You need to know what the variable of interest is. So if a researcher is doing a study, what data are they recording? You need to know how to write the null and alternative hypotheses, both in words and in shorthand, so symbols and numbers. And then the last thing is margin of error. So the first one that we're going to be doing is figuring out if things are experimental or observational. So we've got a list of studies here. For 1 through 7, we need to figure out if it's experimental or observational, and then we also need to explain why we know that. So the first one is, in history class, the effect of listening to music while studying is examined by requiring that half the students listen to music while the other half study in silence. So is this going to be observational or experimental? Well, we have students broken up into groups. So half of them are listening to music and the other half are in silence. So since we're breaking them up into groups, this is what's going to be experimental. And our why, well, just explain why. We have split into groups. Okay. One of them is a control group. Okay, remember control stays the same. So the silent group that's forced to sit in silence, that one stay the same. And then the treatment given to other. So the other group listens to music. Number 2 says, researchers at a local university want to compare the rates of plant disease for ugly fruit plants growing indoors versus outdoors. For 1 year, they collect data on ugly fruit plants at a local outdoor nursery, as well as plants grown indoors to determine whether they have disease or not. So in this study, we have 2 groups, but the researchers they're not going out and actively putting some indoors and some outdoors. They're just finding ones that are indoors and outdoors. So instead of being experimental, this one is just observational. And our reason why, there's no treatment applied to the plants. No treatment applied to the plants. They're just finding them inside or outside. And just to note, they're just observing both indoor and outdoor plants. Number 3, the relationship between weights and heights of 2-year-old children is studied by observing data from the checkups at pediatrician office. So right here in the name, or right here in the description, observing. So right away, they're not breaking 2-year-olds into groups and measuring them or applying treatments. They're just observing the heights and weights of them. So this one is going to be observational. And our reason why, only looking at data taken by doctors. Number 4, a study took random sample of adults and asked them about their meal habits. The data showed that people who ate a light breakfast each day were less tired in the afternoon. So you always got to ask yourself, are they breaking them into groups? Are they telling them, okay, you come over here and eat a light breakfast, you come over here and eat a heavy breakfast? In this study, they're not doing that. They're just taking data of who is eating light breakfast, who is not, and then what are the results in the afternoon. So this one as well is going to be observational. And our reason, We can say data was collected in a survey asking about daily habits. So data was collected in a survey asking about daily habits. Now, number 5 says, people who send more than 50 texts each day were asked to not text one day so that any effect on anxiety levels could be measured. So they are asking people, okay, you don't text, and see what happens. So since they are putting these 50 people these groups of people together and telling them not to text, they're putting them in a group. So this one is going to be experimental. And the key here, they were asked to, okay? So they're telling them, okay, you don't text for a day and see what happens. So I'm going to put were asked to. Those are kind of our key words there. And the reason is not texting is a treatment. And the reason is because it is not their normal routine. Number 6, different brands of soda are measured for sugar, caffeine, and phosphorus levels. So think they are taking all of these brands of soda and they're just measuring them. So they're not really putting any treatments on anything. So this one is going to be observational. And our reason, no treatment applied. They're not putting them into groups or anything like that. They're just collecting data. Number 7, researchers want to compare 2 methods for treating high blood pressure. 50 patients were randomly assigned to 2 groups. One group is put on an exercise program, and the other is treated with drugs. So again, we have 2 groups. We have one that is, right here it says 2 groups, and one group is given exercise, the other is drugs. And so since we are splitting people into groups and applying treatments, this one is going to be experimental. And our reason, split into groups and different treatment applied to each group. Now, number 8 says a researcher wants to study the effects of protein on caffeine absorption. To do so, he asks the volunteers for the study who are willing to participate. He assigns one group to eat a breakfast high in protein and the other a low-protein breakfast. He records the amount of caffeine in the blood daily for 2 weeks. For this study, determine the treatment and the variable of interest. So remember, treatment is what is being applied to people. So I'm going to make a little note. What people are doing. And then the variable of interest is what we are measuring. So what we are measuring. Okay. So what are people doing during the experiment? Well, some people are eating a high-protein breakfast, and some people are eating a low-protein breakfast. So the amount of protein eaten at breakfast is what's changing. Okay, some people are eating high protein, some are low. And then as the researcher, what are we measuring? So we want to figure out the amount of caffeine in the blood. So I'm going to highlight this here. We've got, he records the amount of caffeine in the blood. That's our variable of interest. And then, where is it? He assigns one group breakfast high in protein and the other in low in protein, and this is our treatment. Number 9 says, body temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit has long been accepted as normal body temperature. Recent studies have indicated that the real normal temperature is much lower. State the null and alternative hypotheses in words for this problem. So remember, the null is nothing different, or nothing has changed. And then the alternative, something changed, right? So for our null, we're talking about body temperature and how 98.6 is considered the normal. So for our null, we can say the true mean, because remember, our hypotheses are always talking about true mean, not sample mean. So the true mean body temp is 98.6 degrees. And now if we're talking about something that has changed for our alternative, remember it's saying recent studies have indicated that the real normal temperature is much lower. So for the alternative, we can say the true mean body temp is less than 98.6. Part B says we want to state these hypotheses in the same exact hypotheses in a mathematical symbols. So for the null, remember we use the symbol HO for null, and we can say true mean is equal to 98.6 degrees. And then for the alternative, we can say the true mean is less than 98.6. Now, number 10, it says, for each below, determine the range of values for the study based on the margin of error. So the time it takes a class of students to finish a test was an average of 27 minutes with a margin of error of plus or minus 5. So 27 plus or minus 5. So we need to figure out what the range of minutes is. So we're just going to find 27 minus 5 and 27 plus 5. So 27 minus 5 is 22. 27 plus 5 is 32. So our range is going to be 22 to 32 minutes. Part B, the mean value of a bag of Takis is found to be 13 ounces with a margin error of 3. So 13 plus or minus 3. So 13 minus 3 and 13 plus 3. So we're going to have somewhere between 10 and 16. So we're at 10 to 16 ounces. And then part C, approval ratings for the Georgia Senator Steve Gooch were found to be 62% with a margin error of 8%. So 62 plus or minus 8. So 62 minus 8 and 62 plus 8. So we're going to have somewhere between 54 and 70%.